Morning, everyone. Is everyone hearing me properly? All good. Thank you. Thanks to the sound engineers. So today we are going to talk about notifications and permissions. Before we go into the topic, I would like to do a quick, brief poll. Who finds notifications to be easy on Android? Oh, so you are for the right talk, yeah. You are in the correct room. Permissions. There's a new API with contracts. No, it's not easy. Okay, so correct room, and let's start. Who wants to be a mobile developer? So, which Android API has changed nearly every year since API 1? A, AI. B, business. C, camera. Or D, la réponse D. It stands for answer D, especially from French. A, AI. B, please raise your hand. B, business. C, camera. Oh. And D, la réponse D. Answer D, okay. There were not a lot of people, but I am playing, you are not. So I will say la réponse D. Is that the final answer? Yes. It is answer D, which is notifications, by the way. We have a second question. Notification compat. Who doesn't know about it? Okay, so it's a compatibility API to do notification all Android APIs. Just migrate it to Kotlin, answer A. Answer B is in alpha. Answer B is deprecated. Or answer D was designed in 2010. Answer A. Answer B. Answer C. Deprecated, okay. Answer D. I think there's a few more answer D. Let's try that one. Is that your final answer? Yes, this is answer D again. Okay, let's stop with that. Commercial break. Actual talk is the commercial. Just briefly, I'll talk about who I am. So I've been doing Android development since 2014, and Kotlin since 2016, and a lot of coroutines in 2017, and still today, actually. Kotlin also helped me to do open source stuff. I was a lot more enthusiastic to do it with Kotlin, so I started that also in 2016, and Kotlin made me go a lot more into that direction. And these days, I'm working on charts.kt, which is a Kotlin multi-platform charting library, which works on Android, on iOS, on the web, on desktop, and also on the server. But it's not dynamic. You cannot touch a server, right? Where you can touch an Android or iOS device, for example. I'm also doing stuff on Wear OS and other stuff, but that's not the topic. So that's it. Let's talk about notification compat.java. So through time, a lot of things happened to that class. It was introduced in 2012, and it was 388 lines long. It was copied from notification.java from 2010, and now it's 25 times larger. So almost 10,000 lines of code. You know Vue.java? It's about 30,000, so this is just a third, or wow, it's a third. And that's a bit of a problem. That makes the API quite large, hard to discover. You have more than 500 symbols, and the builder class itself, which is not all of it, has 86 public methods. So when you want to push a notification with maybe a title, an icon, and some text, to be sure that you have the design that you want, you might need to read the documentation of all of those. You also have screaming case constants, and also other nested classes. You have styles, 70 symbols inside the styles. You have extenders. Do you know about extenders? Who knows about extenders? Oh, okay, so extenders, you have TV extender if somehow your notification ends up on the TV app. You have car extender if somehow it comes into an Android Auto system. And you have wear extender if you want to customize it specifically for watches. You also have the actions. I think you know the actions in the notifications, the buttons that you can see. You have verbal metadata, and you have more stuff. So this is what it looks like. This is a structured thing in Android Studio, and you see it's fairly long, and this is the documentation. So yeah, good luck. Good luck reading it. So yeah, in a Kotlin world, it has a large API surface. It's time-consuming to discover. It doesn't have a lot of grouping, even though you have more than 11 other classes besides the main builder. There's a lot of things that don't really have anything to do together, in semantically speaking, and they are still all over the place flattened. So it makes it hard to know what you're looking for. It's kind of like Gradle, but simpler. Like you need to know, to understand everything, you need to understand everything. There's no other way. Also, you don't have default parameter values. You have set all the time because it's a builder API, no property syntax. And weak typing also because you have integers, so you might mistake one integer for the other. It's not so strict. So yeah, in a Kotlin-first world, since 2019, this is what Android is supposed to be. Notifications are not Kotlin-friendly. But what if they were? So this is probably the smallest snippet that I could find to publish notification. Can you see it well? I hope so. OK. And I'm going to be very critical of it and then show something different. So first, you have that context parameter, you know, that famous God object on Android. Here, we are only using it for things that don't depend on the current configuration, because a notification is not really tied to an activity. So it's just the application context. And this, you can have it with Android X App Startup. So you don't really need to put it as a parameter everywhere. And yet, you have to do it here. So that could be omitted. Then you have the channel ID, which is just a string, and maybe some people will just put the string like this and then do a typo. It's not extremely type-safe compared to what we can do with Kotlin. You also have some duplication, because here it's a notification that might have multiple lines of text. So we have the big text style, but for the non-expanded state, you also need to put the same text. Usually, you are rarely putting something different. And so there's duplication for the most common use case of just having the same text, whether it's collapsed or enlarged. Then you have the pending intenting. You want to have an action. And you have the request code, which, if you don't have any specific parameters, should probably just be the default, which doesn't exist. There's no default, but you can safely put it to 0 if you don't have any extras. And also the flag immutable, which I believe should be the default, like val in Kotlin. So that's a lot of noise. And also the entire thing could be an extension function over intent, actually. And the last, well, probably not last, actually, but you have a builder and build, and most of the time you just create a builder to build at the end, so it's also extra characters, and set all the place. So, what's the question? Let's get serious. what is required to post a notification on API level 30? Please raise your hand when you believe this is it. This is very important. This is a really important question. A, permission and channel ID. Okay. B, big icon and channel ID. People didn't read the doc. C, channel ID and content text. Or D, channel ID and small icon. Okay, let's do it again. A. Okay, B. C. D. So again, I am the one playing, and I choose answer D again. D right answer, right? As expected. So by the way, API level 30 is Android 11. It's not always easy because there were 2 API levels for Android 12, 12 and 12L. So who wants to be a 25x engineer? A 25 times larger API means that you need to grow with the code. A question? I will talk about the permission after. Don't worry. So yeah, first, just let's focus on this thing. And yes, that was a trick to show permission. There's a last thing. Also, a small icon is required. It's not obvious because it's just a setter that you are free to not put into the builder chain. But it's actually very important. If you don't have it, Android will not show you notification. So we probably can fix that in Kotlin. This is doing exactly the same thing, but with much less code. Let's look into it. So first, we are using the required parameters. So what is required, right? So the channel ID and the small icon, which you will need on all API levels. Well, not before Android 8, but it's just ignored. You don't need the channel ID here. It's also autocomplete friendly for better discoverability. You can see you write style dot control space, and you see all of the styles available. Also, it sets content title and content text for the collapse state by default. You can customize it if you want, but it's using the default parameter values for that. And you have an extension functions with default parameter values again to convert the intent into a pending activity, a pending intent of activity type, I should say. And the naming is also more concise. The content intent is less intuitive than on-click, and that's what is basically happening. If you click the notification, it opens the thing. So, yeah. Also, channel ID is an inline class, which adds a bit more stronger typing, and that allows you to control access to an instance of that channel ID, so you can make sure that the channel was actually created and sent to the system before giving it for the code that will post the notification. And now let's do a live demo of that API at play that I made recently. Okay. So this is a Java builder thing, and below we have the same example. So again, you have the channel ID, you have the smaller icon, could be whatever you want, and here we are using big text. But that notification before Android 8, it will not do any sound, because on Android 8, the sound configuration and vibration is directed by the channel, but before, it's directed by what you put into the notification. So I want to alert the user. So what I can do is type alert, or if I don't know what is available here, I type this dot, and then I see everything available, and you see we have a few DSL-like things. So we have alert, and here we can see the default parameters. So by default, it's not silent. So if I just write this empty, it should make some sound. Let's look again. You see it's not silent. Oh, wait, no. Alert is something else, actually. Let me look again. You might want to have actually a silent notification when the channel was meant to have sound. So that's what the alerting, you can set it to silent. And what else? You can also say only alert once. So if you update the notification, you are not making the sound again. And you can also say local only, so it doesn't get dispatched to a car or to a watch if that's something you want. So that's the alerting. We have other stuff here. It's been a while I haven't posted a notification, you can see. Well, something interesting we can look into is the time. Notifications, sometimes they tell you how long ago the notification was posted, but sometimes you want to do something different. Maybe it's a notification for something happening into the future, or it could be a timer notification. So with that, you can control it. You can also say this notification is actually from an event that happened before I'm posting this notification. Let's say the device just rebooted, and it's a message that was sent 3 hours ago. Then you want to show that it was 3 hours ago. So here you can put a timestamp, and you can see it's also strongly typed. It's not just a random long. So you are sure that it's a UTC timestamp in milliseconds. That's what the under the hood API is expecting. And so if I want to just create one for now, I can write a UTC timestamp in millisecond, and then write system current. And what else do I need? I can say whether I want to use a countdown chronometer, so that's the thing where the time goes in reverse. So you have all those options. You also have the Wear OS stuff if you want to make things slightly different. For example, if you have a lot of messages, you might want to start from the bottom instead of starting from the top, so the user sees the most recent message first, but it's still in the same order as a message UI. And so here you can say scroll from the bottom, and there are other things that you can see. So I won't dive too deep into that right now, because I plan to publish that later. But it's just to show you how simpler we can make things when we use Kotlin features. OK, let me escape presentation mode and go back to the slides. And yes, there's another question. What is required to post notifications since API level 33? A, experience. B, luck. C, lots of code. Or D, permission. A, B, luck. C, lots of code. You're not sure, right? D, permission. Yes, 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 you're right. OK. So since Android 13, we need a runtime permission. And the runtime permissions are lovely. Who thinks so? From a user perspective. OK. We are in a room of developers. And from a developer perspective, runtime permission APIs? Oh, OK, some people seem to like it. So in a nutshell, this is a diagram. I hid a part so we will see the multiple steps on that diagram. This is an official diagram. So you need to declare the permission, then design your app UX to be self-explanatory. Yeah, it's obvious that we need this permission somehow. Then you need to wait the user to actually do something that will require that permission. So for a messaging app, probably upfront, but for a shipping app, maybe only after they order something to tell them, hey, do you want to be notified when the shipping is progressing or when it's there, simply. Also, you need to check whether the permission was already granted after the user is doing something that will require that permission. which could be, for example, posting notification. And if it's not the case, then you have to check whether you need to show a rationale to the user to be a bit more explanatory, and then explain to the user, request the permission. Does the user grant the permission to your app? If no, you gracefully degrade, obviously. Otherwise, you can access the information. And if the permission was there, you can directly access the information. So, but first, when I just saw that diagram, this is how I was looking like. I'm like, oh, OK, many steps. I just want the permission. But it's not that complicated. Actually, there's an obvious and natural, no other way. Like, you need to declare the permission in the manifest. OK, that's one thing. One thing, it's not really complex. It's one line. It's just a manifest, so you don't have to think where you need to put that line. There's just one place. Then the app UX. Obviously, you are not going to make an app that has a non-obvious UX, right? Right? Anyway, and you wait till the user. So we can move that out of the way. Then other obvious stuff is accessing the info when you have the permission, or do something with it, or degrading your app if you cannot have the permission, if you were not able to convince the user. This is also obvious. So that leaves us with this part, which is still fairly complex when you look at it, but maybe conceptually, it should not be that complicated. Because basically, we have an input. We want permission X, notification permission, for example, or camera, AI. No, there's no AI permission. And output, granted or denied. This is basically a Boolean. To me, it looks like a function. What do you think? Does it look like a function for you? Please raise your hand if you think so. Not everyone is convinced yet. Interesting. So it looks like a function, but you can see that here the steps 6 and 7 are not connected. And it's because there's a callback. Yes, there's a callback. But in Kotlin, we have coroutines, right? So callbacks can become functions, suspending functions for sure, but functions nonetheless. So yeah, to me, it looks like a suspending function. And we'll need to find naming for that function. We cannot call it request permission, because otherwise it would be ambiguous with the request permission API from the system, which is not a suspending function, and that requires you to have a callback declared somewhere else in the activity or in another part. Namer. Who wants to be a namer? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Alexandre. So actually, I have several name ideas. The first one, which I think is the most self-explanatory to what would be that gigantic function that performs multiple steps in one go, is, or gigantic show, should I say, get permission from user best effort. You know, because the user can say no twice, but then maybe you make an update, and then now they want to use that feature that requires a permission, so maybe they change their mind. But the system will they deny twice, or they check the do not ask again on older Android versions, and then you need to take the user to the settings. That's a complicated workflow, and every time you are in a place in your app where you might need that permission, you need to take into account for that. I mean, that's what the docs are telling us. And I didn't like that. Anyway, so I would like to have a function that does the best effort and takes the user to the settings if needed. Another way is to force the user to grant the permission. Don't do that. You cannot, but don't try. There's also the ask permission if possible, which is what many apps are doing. So basically, if the user denied twice, the third time, they are not even bothering taking the user to the settings, so the app is kind of broken, and the user are not sure what to do about it. If they are not a power user and know where to go in the settings for the app, and then go in permissions, and then find what is the permission that was actually missing. And there's ensure permission, if it can make sense, and another one which is attempt getting permission. So personally speaking, as a long-time Android developer, I've been using something named ensure permission since 2019. And it's open source. I will give you info where to find this later. Now that I'm adopting Compose and that I'm changing how I deal with the UI, which is very state-based, I'm also trying something different that would be attempt getting on a specific type. So I'm also using that now. But for the sake of simplicity, I want us to look at ensure permission, the actual function signatures. So it's an extension for component activity, which has a neat API that allows you to not need to declare a callback in the activity. So it works on any component activity now. You can see that there's a parameter that helps you tell whether you want to show the rational upfront or not. So it depends on your app. If there's a camera button, and then it will require the camera permission, probably you don't need to set that to true. So you will want to set that to false. But in other cases, maybe accessing the calendar or something where it's a bit less obvious, you might want to keep that to true. Then there's this suspending lambda, because the entire function is suspend and inline, so that means that all of its lambda can also be suspending, and they should be in that case. So here you see that it returns a Boolean. So we are letting the user back out right as a rational. What I mean is that if you are explaining to the user, this is why we need the permission, and they tell you, no, I don't want, you should give them the option now, instead of burning one of the 2 tickets you have to request the permission from the system API. And in all the cases, you always want to let the user change their mind, say no this time, maybe yes later. So you can integrate that right into your rational UI. And that's what the Boolean is for. It's UI agnostic. You can see it's not tied to views or compose, so you can use it in any UI you want. You can use it with dialogues, whatever. A voice UI, maybe. I don't know if people want to do that, but technically you could do this as well. Then you have the ask open settings or return. So that is in the unfortunate case where the system is telling you, nope, you cannot even show the pop-up. It's not telling you it in a very understandable way, by the way. The APIs could be better, but that's the way it is. And so here, you should also tell the user, give the user the option to not go. So you will tell me, hey, we need to take the settings that don't want. OK, something you need to accept. But at least you are trying, and that's the most important thing. Trying whatever is the state of your app, whatever the previous developers and previous UX led to for the users and what the system kept in mind. Now we cannot ask that permission again. And it's still UI agnostic, of course. And there's this block. This block is very Kotlin-y in a way that you could never do that in Java. It works because we are in an inline function. So here, that inline function, ensure permission, takes a lambda that returns nothing. When you return nothing, you can have it by throwing an exception, or you can also have it by returning. The return expression in Kotlin evaluates to nothing. And sure enough, when you return, you are no longer going to the code that comes after. And since it's inline, the return will be actually at the call site. So that means that you can have a function that tries to go all the way down, but you have a return in that lambda that will back out completely if you were not able to get the permission. So that's why it's called ensure permission, because if that function finishes completely, you are guaranteed that you have the permission. And that leads to a simpler control flow. At least that's my point of view. So what about activity result contracts dot request permission? Who knows about that? OK, now I have a more complicated SQL query. Who is using the runtime permission APIs but didn't know about that one? OK, so you are pretty up to date. So it's the latest and greatest, but it still has callbacks that break the control flow. It also doesn't handle taking the user to the settings if it's needed. And it doesn't handle an edge case where the grant result will be empty and where you need to do some sorcery to be able to find out whether you can request the permission or not. Not exactly sorcery, don't worry. Yeah, there's edge case in the system. I don't know why it's like this. And also, it doesn't handle the lying should show request permission rational. On Android 11, sometimes it gives you, no, you should not show it, but actually the pop-up comes after, and it's not the first time that you are asking the permission. So yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. So actually, I'm using this internally in ensure permission and making up for those things that are not handled right inside the activity result contract. And I want to do a live demo of this. So live demo, I won't run the code, but you can run it at home if you want. I tell you, it works. Just I want to spend time on other stuff. Okay. Basically, I didn't start the emulator. Oh, wrong project. Okay, so this is an example activity where we are just going to request for the permission right when we come. Of course, we could delay and wait for some user action here, but in this case, it doesn't matter. And so I call ensure permission. I give the permission, and here it works with a dialog. So this is a variant of the ensure permission that is opinionated about how we talk to the user about the permission that maybe they denied once or maybe we are about to ask. And so we have a title and a message for that dialogue. And here we just finish the activity if the user is not granting the permission. But we could do something different. We could return at the launch so that thing would stop. Or we could just return at a loop. We could have a kind of infinite loop, but with coroutines, that loop is always cancelable, so long as you are not using just blocking APIs. And so when this function, when this expression is complete, we have the permission. So that's why here, with a view API, we are showing the user, thanks for granting the permission. And yeah, so how does it work internally? So we kept the same parameter about the rational, whether we want to have it or not. And then we have the return button if the user wants to not give the permission. And oh, wait, I'm using the wrong one. Because before, you could hack with fragment APIs to not require a lot of code in the activity. But now, with a new API in component activity, you can do differently. So yeah, this is the correct one. We have the permission, dialog title, message. And so the way it's working is that it's waiting on alert dialogues that it's creating when it's needed. And here we have the OK value where it will be true. So if the user says, yeah, OK, let's go forward, then we will get a true value, and that will be returned to the show rational and continue our return lambda that you've seen before. This is the one, the lower level API that is UI agnostic, and on top of it, we are using alert dialogues. You are also using it for the settings, and the rest is nothing specific, just about those two lambdas. So you can change that and use compose states instead. But I figured that you can actually do things even more differently in compose. So you could use that. But I want to show you another example. OK, so here we have some compose UI. And the way it works is instead of having a suspending function that is a starting point that we will need to think about how to bridge into the compose, instead we have a permission request state. So you call that remember permission request state. You can see that there's some special trickery here, and it's specifically for this talk and the use case of notifications. But it can also apply to other permissions. So over time, Android keeps adding new permissions for privacy reasons or for user experience reasons. Notifications was more user experience-wise. And so before API 33, this post-notifications permission didn't exist. But you don't want to have like 2 code bases or 2 completely different code paths because you are on an older Android version. So what I did with that remember permission request state API is that you can pass a null permission, so you just have to add an if or a when, if you prefer, state expression. And if there's null, then it knows that there's no permission required. And so we just say, yeah, you have whatever permission that doesn't exist on this system, and it will just pass, as if it was already granted, which technically is the case. You have the permission to post notification before API 33, no matter what. So we have that permission request state. Here, this is a UI. So this is not exactly a dialog that shows all the time. This is a dialog that shows only when the permission request state requires it. And it shows the appropriate information. So this is custom stuff, because you might want to show it full screen, you might want to have a dialog, you might want to have a snack bar. So this is really custom stuff that you design for your design system, your UX. But maybe the dialog thing is fine for you, and you would want to just copy-paste that code, or use the previous API, which is not using composed dialogues, but just normal, I don't know, old, and still working dialogues. And so if we look into that, we can see that at some point it checking the request state. And here we can see whether we are waiting for the rational or not. And here we can see whether we are waiting to show the user that they are going to be taken to the settings. And yeah. So this is UX, and then we have the user action here. But before, we are waiting for that user action. So this is just a bridge between coroutines and states. So it's a state that we can call, and when that state has been called, it will trigger recomposition for the things that we're listening to it. And you can, in a launch effect or in any other coroutine, you can await for that to be called. So that gives us the ability to have a button that will call that callable state, as you can see here. And we can have on the coroutine end something that will wait for that to be called. So it's kind of like a channel, but for compose. And here the type is unit because we don't need any value. But if we want to, we can add any type we want here. And then that means that we will need to put a parameter here inside the argument. So we are waiting for the user action, which here is clicking the button do something notifications. And so when the user is clicking, then we get here. Here we are again calling something on the permission request state, and you have that attempt getting function. So here it's not like ensure permission, which would guarantee you that you have the permission if and only if the function was going to the end and resuming. Here we get a Boolean instead. And so basically, if the Boolean is true, that means that you have the permission, then you can do something with notifications. So that API, the code is not out there yet, but don't worry, I will put all the information for you to know when it's out. It took me some time, but I think you will understand when you will see the slides. Any question? Is there a mic? So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, can you explain again why do you need the launch effect?
Sorry?
Can you explain why do you need the launch effect block once again, or?
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. So, sorry, you're very right. I should explain that.
And just a second. And can it be replaced with a normal coroutine and coroutine context?
Say that?
Can it be replaced with a normal coroutine in dispatchers?
Oh, you mean without this API, how it works?
No. Instead of launched effect, can you use a Kotlin coroutine like any type of dispatcher I/O or something like that? Oh,
you mean is it possible to do any coroutine here?
No. Instead of launch effect, can we replace it with a different coroutine? Like, let's say, global scope or something like that.
Okay, I'm not sure I quite got it, but let's talk afterwards. But I will answer the first question, which is about launch effect. Here, the launch effect is where I'm controlling the business logic, I would say, where I will need the permission. And so I'm waiting for the UI, over the UI, I'm waiting for the user action, and then I'm doing something. But maybe the permission got denied the first time, and maybe the user will try again to do that thing. Maybe they will say, oh no, I don't want to bring the permission, and then they see the button pops again, and then they're like, oh, but actually I need to send that picture. Okay, so let me click again on that camera button, grant the permission this time. So that's why you have a loop here. And so, yeah, that's a launch effect unit because you compose requires to put a key. But in this case, we don't have much changing because this thing doesn't need recomposition. I mean, the request state is always the same after the first instantiation. Okay. Let me switch back to the slides. Oh, what happened? All right, so where can you find these APIs? You can find them on my machine. And you can find it later this year on the Splitties/Funpack GitHub repository. And you might think, what is Splitties? And there's a lot of history because that started in 2016. But I will do short what it was and what is going to become. So Splitties right now, and right now it's a set of small libraries, most Android only and some multi-platform. There's something for runtime permissions. The ensure permission is there. It contains some of my best extension and API simplifiers, things where I was finding that Android X is not simplifying things enough, or not providing the batteries for the toy. And soon, it's going to be an open source software organization hosting multiple Kotlin projects. The reason why I'm doing that is because the Splitties repository right now is quite big, and the documentation is a bit hard to follow because there's some multi-platform stuff and then a lot of Android stuff, and it's not super easy to give info, to understand when you are a newcomer. And soon it will also contain more totally crafted API simplifiers and extensions. One of them, for example, is audio focus. Audio focus, it's also a lot of callbacks, and there are some ways to simplify it, and nothing in Android X yet. So this is the kind of thing that I will bring into one of the projects in the Splitting organization. And the code of ensure permission that I told you, it's in the current repository, but it's not published on Maven Central, the latest version. The latest published version is using the fragment APIs, same API, but it's using it works only on fragment activity. But the next version will support just component activity. And the notification API will be in a future version in a new repository. And so I need to split this, actually. Yeah, I know it sounds fun. So right now, there's this repository, and for the sake of simplicity, I will split it into all of those repositories and also all of those repositories. This is where the code is going to end. And the original repository will go away. Actually, it will become the Funpack, which is the one that will have the most important things for Android developers. Multi-platform stuff will be in the Funx kinds of repositories, and the Android-only stuff will be in the Funpack, which is like made on purpose to rhyme with Jetpack. And yeah, that's it. Also, those projects will have their own bill of materials. So we have one version per repository, but inside the repository, you might have multiple libraries. So you don't need to depend on all of Funpack if you just need to access the notifications API, for example. So before your brain leaves, don't forget to watch releases, because I will publish a release on this repo as I'm doing that splitting. So to do that, you click on the watch button here, Then you go into the custom. Unfortunately, Microsoft made it very easy. And then you click on releases, and then you click on apply, and then you can get GitHub notification when there's a new release. And don't worry, I'm not publishing a release every 2 days. Quite far from that. And you can add a star. No, don't need to touch the sponsor button. And you can also subscribe to my blog. I don't blog often, but I will blog about that thing because it's a lot of effort, so it's worth blogging about. You can ask me any question. That's it. Oh, crap, sorry. Let me